Good afternoon, John. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, for all our listeners and viewers, let me give you a quick introduction. My name is Saurav, and I'm the co founder and CEO of SIERA.AI. We are a company that focuses all its energies on solving efficiency and safety problems in warehouses and factories by protecting people from getting hurt, by protecting damages to facilities, and helping our customers digitize their day to day operations. With that, I would love to welcome John. And John, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your story?
Sure. My name's John Williams. I have been, just honored to be in leadership roles in industrial operations for the last 35 years. It's been a long journey with multiple companies across multiple states, even a couple of different industries. But I think in each of those industries, you see a commonality of the most important resource being our people.
Mhm.
And when we consider our people being the most important resource, then how are we protecting them? And I think that's where your organization comes in from a safety perspective. What are we doing to protect our folks, especially in that warehouse operation where we're always go go go,
Right, right,
and
right.
and that unfortunately sometimes comes second to the safe safe safe. So,
Right.
but yeah, so most recently I have worked in three of the largest global third party logistics companies
Mhm.
that are out there, and have had a lot of engagement coast to coast, even worldwide. Spent some time in Spain, in Germany, in Austria, all with the same organizations. So just a little bit of travel.
Right. Can you tell us the names of some of those organizations that you worked with in your,
Sure,
deep experience in the industry?
sure. Most recently, I was with a company called Geodis. Geodis is actually owned by the French government, French Railroad, but it is a very large third party logistics or contract logistics organization. Prior to that, I spent 3 years with Kuehne Nagel, which is
Got it.
based out of Germany.
Hmm.
Been around for about 130 years now.
Wow.
And then prior to that, I worked for XPO, and XPO actually had bought Conway Freight, which had a contract logistics organization, Menlo Worldwide. Menlo Worldwide is where I started my third party logistics endeavors back in 2007.
Got it.
Prior to that, I worked in organizations called Velasas. I worked in private packaging companies.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, okay, good bit of cross experience, we'd say.
That's a lot of different experience. I mean, you've gone through so many different, big brand name businesses. I mean, these are all industry leaders in their space. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
John, what do you feel like over these, past years has been your biggest success on the job? Is there something that sticks in your memory as that one big thing?
Well, I mean, there's probably a lot of different successes that I could point to. But I think what's important because of the topic that we really want to stay focused on, which is safety, I could take it back to the facility in LA,
Hmm.
which was,
Hmm.
and the customer there for the third party logistics. And I think everybody knows how.
Hmm.
And we went through a pretty heavy period of our incidence rates being off the charts in a bad way.
Right.
So, with additional leadership focus and looking for means of being more effective in the workplace safety wise,
Hmm.
the team at one point then celebrated a full year with no lost time injury. And I think that's definitely something to be celebrated. We've seen that happen in a couple of facilities.
Right. Right.
Other successes can obviously speak to employee engagement scores and customer engagement scores, because if you don't have the relationship with the customer, if you don't have the relationship with the people,
Hmm.
the rest of it really is secondary. You're just pushing numbers and hoping for the best, and hope's
Right.
a lousy business strategy. So,
Hope is a lousy business strategy. Absolutely. You want to make sure that you put, the solutions, the tools in place to make sure the job gets done right. So
absolutely.
as you pointed out, as business grows in any warehouse or factory, the incident rates go up, right? It happens. Is there one kind of particular incident that sticks out in your mind, like something that it's hard to forget?
Well, Probably the most the scariest incident rate or incident was many years ago under the company it is now called,
Mhm.
and an individual was struck by a forklift.
Mhm.
And struck from the perspective of as the forklift swung, for those that understand operating sit down forklifts, it's the rear wheels that steer.
Mhm.
And so as the rear end kicked out, it literally caught an employee who was in mid stride.
All right.
It tore the flesh on the inseam of their leg. The
Wow.
force was so great. It could have been a lot worse. We've seen stories or heard stories and seen a situation where there's been fatalities, even decapitations. Sorry to say, but in the industry, if we're not truly operating from a safe perspective and not as a catchphrase, but as a true culture,
Mhm.
we risk people getting hurt.
Right.
So yeah, that's been kind of the worst. Now the most consistent doesn't speak so much to material handling equipment. The most consistent injury tends to be lifting because people tend to get again busy, and they fail to use proper lifting technique. So a lot of strains, in that regard.
Right. So it sounds like, you've seen a lot. Obviously, the incident that you mentioned with the forklift ripping off the flesh of that person's leg,
Yeah, yeah,
horrendous, horrific, and nobody wants to see that or experience that in their workplace. Um, Zooming out a little bit, as an operations leader, what is your number one goal in any operation? From our experience, we have been told that I want 100% productivity but I don't want to jeopardize the safety of my people. What is your
yeah.
goal? Does that resonate?
Well, it does resonate. And what is challenging is we're always battling with the almighty dollar, right?
Mhm.
Every business is in business to make money.
Mhm.
And so that tends to be that first and foremost challenge. But you need to peel that back and get more to the root of what's going on. And again, we go back to people.
Right.
If you are truly sincere and actioning people being first and foremost and keeping them safe, a couple of different things happen. From
Mhm.
a financial perspective, you reduce your cost of insurance, you
Mhm.
reduce your impact of claim. So you have a financial gain there. Pretty simple, right? Take it from a different perspective. If you are working in an operation where you feel that your safety is important, the company is working diligently to ensure that you're safe and effective, you're probably going to appreciate being there.
Mhm.
When that's the case, you're going to stay. And a tenured workforce that feels appreciated is definitely going to give you optimum performance, and you're going to be right back to making that money.
Right.
So you're kind of solving the financial challenge by working the people aspect. I hope that makes sense.
Right, got it. So if I was to summarize for our listeners, what it sounds like you're saying is that by keeping those people safe, you're obviously reducing injuries, which lowers your workman's comp and insurance rates or claims. Longer term, it really solves the labor retention challenge. And
Absolutely.
would you say that in today's market, hiring labor in a warehouse or a factory is tough? How tough is it?
Every industry is going to be a little bit different,
Mhm.
certainly. But when you look at it from a contract logistics or third party logistics perspective, we go in and approach companies to run the business for them,
Mhm.
indicating we can do it at a better price.
Right,
Well, what do you think drives one of the biggest costs, right? It's labor.
labor.
So you tend to go low on your dollar.
Mhm.
Now you are not competitive in the marketplace and you see a constant churn of employees. If the dollars we talk about from a safety perspective can be captured and those dollars can be translated back to the hourly workforce, the workforce that is really running the business, you're now going to again gain that credibility, and it's not going to be as competitive. You now become a place where people want to come work. They're paid better, they're kept safer, the
Mhm.
culture is one where they feel appreciated.
Right.
So it kind of comes full circle because it is challenging in the marketplace right
Right. Got it. So, in terms of the top three challenges that an operations leader faces, what would you name as your top three?
so if I had to name it as the top three, I think the one of the first ones that comes to mind is that employee retention.
Okay.
Because again, you really want that tenured workforce. That
Right.
tenured workforce is going to give you great gains.
Right.
But coupled with that is the safety of what you're doing. Warehouse work is dangerous work.
Mm-hmm.
You have inanimate objects being operated by a human element that is, we're flawed, we make mistakes, and you can end up damaging people, damaging equipment, damaging product. So to really build the culture of safe, I think is the other big challenge. And it comes right in with retention. And then of course, the holy grail, so to speak, operationally is, can you truly poka-yoke your systems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you error proof what you are trying to do operationally as you eliminate waste to become more efficient? I guess those could be the top three. I could probably give you a few more, but I think those would definitely be in the top three.
Got it. No, that makes total sense, and that resonates. What we have learned in our journey, talking to many different VPs and directors of operations. You brought up an interesting point: damages. People injuries. We brought it up, and you told us about this horrendous accident. Somebody's leg got peeled off. Damages. I think damages is something that resonates with a lot of people we talk to in the warehousing and manufacturing industry, because pedestrian injuries may be happening at a lower rate, but
Mm-hmm.
damages is something that's happening on an hourly rate almost. Something is hitting something. It's surprising that it's at an hourly rate, but it happens. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that from your experience?
Yeah. So, and there's simple things that we try to coach. Just we'll talk about forklift for just a minute.
Hmm.
We always say flat is your best friend, meaning forks are level.
Hmm.
People forget and they lower the forks and they're tilted too far down, or they leave them tilted up. And as they go to approach product, well, what do you think happens? They're either damaging the product or they're damaging the pallet. And if you're running a warehouse from an e-commerce perspective, it doesn't even have to be e-commerce, but if you're damaging product, you have just taken inventory away
Hmm.
that a customer thought was available, and now you're impacting customer relationships, which is like the number one taboo, in the industry. It's all about customer satisfaction. People are always wanting to do a good job.
Hmm.
Very few, if any, people get up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to go to work and screw up today, right?
Right.
They get up, they want to go to work, they want to do well, but they get in a hurry because what is operations doing? We
Hmm.
need it faster. We need it faster. We need it faster. So
Right.
people get careless. That product gets damaged. Now you no longer have that product to sell to the person that thought it was available. You now have to go through the cost of recouping that. If it can be recouped, you're either reboxing it or you're having to scrap it, and then you're having to reorder. Or the worst one yet, people get paranoid about having caused the damage and they try to hide it.
Hmm.
And that hidden damage ends up shipping to a customer.
Right.
Now you've got a whole new ball of wax to deal with.
Right. So product damage is a big taboo because you're hurting your reputation with the customer. What about you? You also mentioned, damages to equipment, damages to facilities. What's
Mhm.
happening there?
So, I mean, in several instances, even recently, that I've encountered, forklifts or even pallet jacks, stand up. Well, we call them walkie riders, we call them dock stockers, but they're all heavy pieces of steel, right?
Hmm.
It doesn't take but a couple of miles an hour for one of those to hit a racking upright
Hmm.
and render it useless.
Right.
You might not knock it down, but from a safety perspective, if you've sheared one bolt on that leg, you
Hmm.
now have to close off that entire area of
Hmm.
racking
Hmm.
until it can be assessed and repaired.
Right.
But you just lost inventory space or you just lost access to inventory. All of those are going to impact your operation, period.
That makes total sense. For the benefit of our readers, could you kind of shine some light on how frequent is that? What we have heard, for example, in our conversations is, oh, we're losing anywhere from 100 to $200,000 in this distribution center on just repairing damages to our racks and equipment.
I think if that is considered annualized, you're really close. In some cases, it can be a lot more.
Okay.
Um, it's not one damaged upright to replace, the cost to bring in the right people to get in, to tear it down, to put it back up, can easily be $2,000. Now you say, okay, $2,000 to $100,000. Where's my 50x at?
Mhm.
Well, that 52 weeks in a year, if you've got 20 pieces of equipment running 24 hours a day,
Mhm.
it doesn't take much for those things to run into
Mhm.
an upright. And again, the human element, depending on how you're set up with your safety equipment, that racking can be hit and no one ever notified.
Right.
If you don't have the right technology associated with your equipment,
Mhm.
that person's going to hit it. They're going to look around. Nobody saw me. Away they go.
You bring up an interesting point. Well, I mean, you're running the interview for me.
Yeah.
You brought up technology, and there have been many different technologies that we have seen and we have been told about, and the people that are in the industry use, ranging from let's say checklists, paper forms, and checklists as the
Mhm.
simplest or oldest traditional way of doing things, to recording impacts, or doing some kind of like safety audit plan or training plan. Putting that, help us put that into perspective. That's the old way of doing things. What do you recommend, maybe like top three or top five? What do you recommend to business leaders, to operations leaders, EHS leaders, how they should run their business to maximize productivity, to reduce accidents, injuries, damages? What suggestions do you have for them? How can they leverage solutions, tools, and technologies that are out there?
Well, first of all, I think any industry leader, and again, I like to say I'm just a little guy, little fish in a really big pond. There's a
Mhm.
lot of very intelligent, seasoned leaders out there that could come with different perspectives.
Mhm.
But I will tell you that from what I have seen, and I've been a boots on the ground guy for the better part of 35 years. You have to assist the human element because
Right.
you're not going to take it away. So you have to assist it, right? So as an example, you mentioned checklists. I would challenge any operator in a warehouse to go out and check every piece of equipment to ensure that it has that pre-inspection list signed off for that person for that day.
Mhm.
They'd be surprised how many times you're not going to find it. Now, if you're set up to where it's digital, it's easier for the employee to do it. And if it's driven as part of the system to where you cannot operate without conducting and completing said checklist, well, now you're going to make sure that it's done. Two things happen. You've confirmed that the operation or the equipment is safe, and you have now put yourself in a really good position with OSHA, because when OSHA comes in to investigate an accident, which is bound to happen, they're going to ask, show me your training, show me your pre inspection checklist.
Right.
Now, you could spend hours wrestling through paper, or you could go to your computer and pull it up and show this is where it took place and when. So I think digitizing that kind of data, I think it helps the employee. They also see you investing into what's going to work better for them.
Mhm.
The other thing is just technology, period. If you have the ability, something as simplistic as stopping the equipment cold
Mhm.
when it hits something, then you're going to know who did it.
Mhm.
You're going to know where it happened. You're going to be able to do corrective action, and you're going to be able to fix the damage repair.
Mhm.
But let's talk in the process of lean for just a minute. If we are truly using lean methodology, don't we want to go to the root cause and continue to ask the whys until we get there?
Mhm.
And if you truly get to the root cause, what are your options and opportunities of preventing the accident in the first place?
Right.
That's when you have really crossed the threshold of protecting people, protecting equipment, protecting product.
Right. So it's not just about acting after something has happened. It's about preventing that from happening, which is the lean mindset. And that is the way we should be doing things, being proactive instead of reactive. Would you say?
Well, absolutely. And again, thing if it comes to my head, it comes out my mouth. So I apologize if this doesn't align, but we have this tendency as we're driving down the highway of cruising along and everything's fine, but we see a police officer off to the side of the road. What do?
Slow down.
We immediately slow down and we look, right? Well, one of the leading dollar costs of accidents has been in uh, LTL or truckload, right?
Mhm.
The trucks that are out there on the road that are making these deliveries and doing these long hauls. What did a lot of them do now? A lot of these companies have them governed to not exceed a certain speed. You just took away the human element of traveling at an unsafe speed,
Right.
right? So again, going to the root cause and trying to be proactive. So, they're not going to have an accident. They're not going to get a ticket. They don't have to slow down when they see the officer because they can only go so fast.
Got it. No, that really makes sense, and that aligns with what we've learned in our journey, talking to businesses that are running major e-commerce distribution centers, businesses that are running food production facilities, businesses that are manufacturing residential equipment. So many of these places, we've seen the same trends and learned the same things that you're saying. So that makes a lot of sense. What do you see happening over the next 5 to 10 years in this warehousing distribution industry? What are the top trends that you feel will change the face of the industry?
Well, we keep talking about safety and we keep talking about people and we talk about technology. When you consider how fast technology is moving,
Mhm.
smart industry leaders that have the ability to show the return on investment are going to invest in more robotics, more automation, more artificial intelligence. The more that you can bring into the operation to minimize the human element, including human fatigue, those are the companies that I think are going to move further. You're never going to completely get away from needing people, or at least I hope not, because then I'd be unemployed. But you certainly need to move more into the intelligence of what's out there. And
Right.
my gosh, there is a lot of intelligence out there.
Right, absolutely. So what I hear you saying, what you're recommending to business leaders is, hey, look at your people, invest in technology solutions that can add intelligence and bring in that intelligence to empower your people to work better, be more productive, be more efficient. And where it makes sense, where there's room, maybe you can bring in automation or robotics, because like you said early on as well, you can't get rid of the people, you still need people. So you can either empower the people or identify places where there's just redundancy, for example.
You have to change your game. The old adage that has been around for who knows how long is if you continue to do what you've always done, you'll continue to get what you've always got.
God, yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times over the years I have seen the typical solution is retrain, re-educate, re-observe, re. Okay. So if you're constantly finding yourself in that cycle, is it not worth determining what that is costing you and what you could gain by taking it to the next level of intelligence, robotic automation, AI?
Awesome. That, John, I think wraps up my my conversation with you. You've touched upon a lot of interesting points. Everything resonated with what we have learned, and you added a lot of interesting data points to that. In parting, is there anything else that you would like to add to our conversation, something that we should have touched upon or talked about that I missed?
I think the important pieces are the people, right? Because again, and I think you've heard me say this. I cringe when somebody goes, "Our people are our greatest asset," because I don't want our people to be viewed as an asset that depreciates. They need to be viewed as a valuable resource and a reason the teams succeed. But if we truly want to put our best foot forward for taking care of those that are running the business, we owe it to them to invest in what the future is going to be. And that's going to be with more technology, more automation, more artificial intelligence, the tools that are going to help them be safe, to return to their families the same way they left, and to be able to operate in an environment where they understand that the company cares about them and their safety.
Awesome. Thank you so much. For our listeners and our viewers, I'm talking to John. John Williams has been an industry expert for the last 30 years. He has been an operational leader at major corporations like Geodis, Kuehne Nagel. He has worked in e-commerce. He has worked in distribution. He has seen the ins and outs of the industry. He has seen the industry grow, and he was kind enough to take out his time today to join us and help us understand from his perspective how businesses can improve their safety and efficiency to make themselves more productive. Thank you, John. Thank you for
All
your
right.
time.
Thank you so much.